Hi, my name's Caitlin, and this is my final policy pitch. For my topic, I chose to focus on eyewitness identification. The class textbook states that false identifications can be a leading cause of wrongful identifications in a lot of jurisdictions. This results in many innocent people going to jail and serving time for crimes that they did not commit, as we saw in the case of Ronald Cotton. Um, it can be tricky because identification is a recognition memory task, which is oftentimes out of the control of people working in the criminal justice system. That being said, while there are changes to be made, there have been many studies done and much research gathered on this topic in order to help people working in the criminal justice system understand what factors they actually are able to control in this process. So the first reform that I would like to propose is that it's a requirement that there is concrete evidence against a person in order to include them in a lineup as a suspect. So that would be evidence other than just their resemblance to a description given by an eyewitness. Um, Wells et al. Reported that putting somebody in a lineup without evidence against them created a likelihood that a mistaken identification would occur. And obviously, it reduced the chances of identifying the culprit because there was no evidence other than the eyewitness identification that this person was the culprit. Um, while I'm on the topic, I do want to acknowledge, like in Dror et al. In 2011, there can be cognitive bias among investigators that leads to them deciding what concrete evidence is suggestive that a person can be a culprit. Um, so just investigators being more aware of their cognitive bias in that process could even more so help reduce the amount of innocent people that are included in lineups as suspects. The other reform that I would like to propose is that we pay attention to the possibility of clothing bias in these lineups. Um, Brackman et al. In 2019 performed a study during which they found a person was, or an eyewitness was more likely to identify an individual as the culprit if that individual was wearing clothing that was similar to what the culprit had been reported to be wearing at the time of the offense. So obviously, this would be something that the criminal justice system could control for by having all of the culprits dress in a similar manner. That way, no one is singled out and no one is, or we could make sure that no one is wearing similar clothing to what the culprit was reported to be wearing. This could just kind of take care of that possible bias that could happen in the eyewitness's mind, and hopefully lead to less innocent people being identified as the culprit. Um, I do want to mention one drawback um, found by Lindsay et al. In 1987 was that compensating for clothing bias was found to not actually be super effective if other factors were not addressed in the eyewitness lineup. So other factors like, the use of double blind lineups or suggestiveness to the eyewitness by investigators. So it was just that kind of stuff that needs to be addressed as well if we're going to compensate for clothing bias. And these are my references, and thank you very much for watching.